Evening, everybody. Welcome. Olive, I see you're here.
Hi, Joanne. You can hear
Hello.
me.
Eleanor, how are you? Eleanor Mead, I see you. And we've Kieran Deneen. We have Maria Hagerty, Sue, Kay Looney. You're all very welcome. We're just going to give it another minute.
Hi.
How are you, Kay? Long time no see here.
Oh, good.
Good woman.
Oh, good. I'm just chilling out here this minute.
Good, good. Ready to hear all about property, are you?
Hope you all have a glass of wine and you're going to relax and enjoy this
Gonna
session.
know it all by the
About
end.
learning, you know. It's
All
all about
interesting
learning
anyway.
something new. Yeah. And I see my
That's right.
double chin. I look at myself, but we won't go there.
Don't look at yourself. That's the trick now, I've learned.
Exactly, exactly. Lee, I can't see faces, just to let you know, I can only see a list.
Yeah, I can see them here up on the side because the screen has been shared.
Yes.
They're kind of along the side there.
Yeah, that's fine, that's grand. So Olive, can you hear me? Olive Smonin?
Yeah, I can. Thank you.
Oh, hi, how are you?
Hi, very good. Thank you.
Great, delighted you're here. And who else we got? So,
You're 26 in there now, Joanna.
okay, so what time are we now?
3 minutes past. We could kick it off.
Yeah, we'll kick it off there now. So I'm just going to switch off this. So evening all, and welcome to our Keys to the Future event. My name is Joanna Murphy. I'm president of the Cove and Harbour Chamber, but I'm also auctioneer here in Cove. So just thank you all for registering this evening to what I promise you will be a very engaging information session on involved in buying and selling your property. Just for some of you that really don't know what the Cove and Harbour Chamber are doing here in Cove, we're an entity here that represents and acts as the voice for Cove, whereby we engage the stakeholders such as the Cork County Council, the Port of Cork for the betterment of Cove. So we've been engaging with the new streetscape, which is planned, and Irish Water and National Broadband, etc. We've been running a really good few breakfast meetings over the last couple of months. And actually our next, our next session workshop is actually called From Cruise to Cork Harbour, Disembark and Rediscover Cork. And it's basically whereby we're trying to promote excursions in Cove on board the cruise ships so that we can lure the passengers into Cove to enjoy Cove and the surrounding area. Other events that we have our breakfast meeting commencing again in September, whereby we'll have Pfizer speaking. And thankfully, we're going to have our first physical social networking event, which will take place on the 3rd of September over in Spike Island. All these events you can book through the Cove and Harbour Chamber website. Also, obviously, a lot of you if you'd like to join the Cove and Harbour Chamber, or your companies could very well be a member of the Cove and Harbour Chamber, which means you are. Just for you to know that we engage a lot of networking events, and also gives you an opportunity to network with each other and build relations and build communications. So I'm going to hand you over now to Lee Gillen, who is our event moderator from Lee Gillen Events. So thank you.
Thanks a million, Joanna. Just throwing a few notes in there. So good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Cove and Harbour Chamber Keys to the Future event. So we're delighted to have you here, as always. You know, buying or selling a house can be a daunting task, especially if you have no one to ask for advice. But also it can be a problem if you have too many people advising you, your friends, your workmates, your family, basically everyone you know. But not everyone's experience is the same. And as all of our speakers will attest to, the world of property is dynamic and changes with supply and demand, as well as other legislative and benchmarking changes. Most of the rules and regulations around buying and selling property are there to protect you. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't inform yourself about the process and any risks to yourself. After all, buying a house is most definitely the single largest financial commitment of your life, so it's worth taking the time to figure out any pitfalls or issues from the get-go. So in the meantime, we've put together an expert panel, which I hope will answer some of those questions that you've had. Each one of our speakers tonight has a wealth of experience in their own areas of finance, property, engineering, and law. Each one is a vital link in the chain, and working together will all serve to advise and guide you through the process. Please feel free to pop your questions in the chat as we go along. Hopefully we'll have time at the end to take some questions, but it'll be pretty jam-packed tonight. So we're going to start with the first link in the chain, the finance. Getting mortgage approval and financing for your home is the first step of your journey, so that you know what kind of house you can afford, what kind of interest rates are out there, and what you need to know for this big investment. So I'm going to introduce you now to Colin Moorhead and say a few words about him first. So Colin is a native of Cork, commenced his banking career with AIB in Dublin, and following 10 years overseas, returned to Cork, where he has held a number of regional management roles. In 2017, Colin moved with his family to live in Cove, and in 2018 was appointed branch manager of the AIB branch here in Cove. Colin firmly believes that AIB's commitment to the communities in which they operate means that his decision to personally meet customers starting out on their mortgage journey or even continuing their journey has been positive, and we are delighted to have Colin share his wealth of experience here with us this evening. Over to you, Colin.
Thanks, Lee, and good evening, everyone. And as Lee has said, I'm going to talk to you about your mortgage journey. I suppose this covers the full gambit, from whether you're starting out and buying your first property, or maybe you're trading up, or maybe even you're looking for a top up, or maybe you're switching. So it's the full gambit. On the slide in front of you, you can see, actually I get Cormac, if you can just move the slide on one, great. So on that slide, you can see an infographic summarizing the 4 steps in your mortgage journey. The first being the consultation, where you'll meet someone like me who will take you through what information the bank requires and answers the many questions I'm sure you'd have. Once that supporting documentation is received and assessed, an approval in principle is granted. So this approval lasts for 6 months and is normally required as a proof of funds from an auctioneer's perspective before you view a property, or certainly before an offer is made. Once the property has been identified, the journey moves to the next stage, where you'll have the need of your solicitor. So you need to have them nominated, and a formal letter of offer can then be issued. This is the legal loan agreement, which your solicitor will review with you. And I know Charles will take you through this in a little bit more detail later on this evening. And finally, we move to the drawdown stage, where funds are released to the client solicitor to facilitate the close of sale. At this stage is where your life cover, home insurance are required, and AIB can obviously help you with this with discounts for customers. From an AIB perspective, the key point here is to emphasize there's a dedicated person throughout the journey to help and guide you, because it can be quite a daunting process. And it's nice to know that there's someone there at the end of a phone or in the office who'll be able to sit and meet with you. Cormac, we'd move on to the next one there. This is probably one of the key slides, because it's the question that gets asked the most, how much can I borrow? Sorry now, guys, my presentation isn't matching the screen, so give me 2 seconds. So as part, the Central Bank of Ireland has in place a series of mortgage measures to which all lenders must comply. The measures set ceilings on the amount of money that can be borrowed to buy residential property, using both loan-to-value limits and loan-to-income limits. In addition, each financial institution will have their own lending policies. So in essence, everything you see on the slide here, you must satisfy all 4 criteria. So maximum loan-to-value limits. So this is where we just express the loan as a percentage of the property. For a first-time buyer, they can get 90% of the value. For a second-time buyer, 80%. And for a buy-to-let investor, 70%. Loan to income, up in the top right-hand side there, 3.5 times, but can be up to 4.5 times for someone who's switching. So an existing mortgage holder who's just switching their loan provider. And we'll talk maybe a little bit more about that in a second, because it's quite a topical point at the moment. Net disposable income, or NDI, is best explained via an illustration, and I'll go through that with you in a second. But basically, after you've paid your mortgage, there must be a minimum amount available to meet your cost of living expenses, and each bank will have their own requirements in this regard. For AIB, as a single person, you need to have €1,400 left, plus an additional €250 per dependent child. And then the last box there on the bottom right is demonstrated repayment capacity, probably the most important bit of them all. So you need to have a proven ability to afford a mortgage. And simply there, what we'd say is at least 6 months track record by way of savings and or possibly rent from your bank account which will demonstrate that you have the capacity to meet the mortgage repayments required. Move on to the next one there, Cormac, thanks. So here you'll see a simple illustration. I thought it might help just with people's understanding of everything. Here we have a joint application. So two people, both income earners with one dependent child. I picked a random property, purchase price 300,000 euros. They're first time buyers. So the maximum loan they could receive is 90%. So you can see that's 270,000 euros. A deposit would be 30,000. That the evidence of that deposit at mortgage date would be required. So in other words, just it might be by way of savings, or it could be a gift from a family member, etc. And just as an example, the current repayments of that over 35 years at a standard variable rate would be 3.15%, gives you a repayment of 1,062. The next one I'm just going to hold for a second. So we're moving further along. We're making an assumption here, annual salary in the region of 80,000 as a joint couple, so 44 and 36,000 there. Monthly net income would be net 5,200. We're making typical example here of childcare and loans. Now, guys, everyone's going to vary, but it's just to give an example here of 1150. And the cost of living per couple. So married couple is 2,050. One dependent child is at 250 euros. That's 2,300. So in other words, what's remaining for the mortgage repayment after those deductions is 1,822. Now we can see up there that I'd said that the current repayments would be 1,062, but every bank, every financial provider will stress test the repayments. And the reason why they do that and what a stress test means is we'll add an amount to the interest rate to ensure that if interest rates go up, which in no time, at some stage they definitely will go back up again, that it doesn't pose a problem for the individual borrower. So there you'll see the difference there is they would stress at a rate of 5.5, which makes a substantial difference to the monthly repayment. So it goes to 1,450. But in this example, the customer well exceeds by 372 euros what would be required. So that actual application is one that I did recently, and yet that mortgage is currently gone through the books. Move it on there, please, Cormac. Okay, so just some extra tips that might be of help. So proven ability to afford the mortgage. As I said, you must have at least 6 months track record. One thing that people get caught on here in particular is with rent. If they're paying rent, I would always suggest them they pay rent by standing order from their account. The reason why is that it shows a demonstrated amount going out on a monthly basis. Some people will take cash out in maybe various amounts. The problem with that is it's very hard to prove what it was for. So you would then have to provide maybe a rent book or something like that that will demonstrate it. So I would always say if you're paying a landlord, pay them by standing order. They'll like it because it means there's no messing about each month. And from your perspective, you're building up that repayment track record. Previous loans or credit cards, customer doesn't need to have any previous lending to qualify for a mortgage, but obviously previous loans and credit cards history can affect a mortgage. So what I would say is, again, meeting with your advisor, you would talk through the loans, you would explain, maybe you had an issue with at some stage. That's absolutely fine. It's just make sure you talk to your individual mortgage advisor about that. 9 times out of 10, it won't be a problem. Customers who've lived abroad, we have a lot of people. Joanna was talking about the progress that the Harbour is making and stuff that we see in the Chamber on a regular basis, and I see here in the bank. We have a lot of people returning home, which is fantastic to see. So anyone who's lived abroad in the last 3 years, or who has bank accounts in another country will need to provide a credit check from that country. Again, it's a relatively straightforward process. And for those who are in Ireland who require a visa to live in Ireland, that visa must be a minimum of a stamp 4 or a critical skills visa for a mortgage to be obtained from AIB. Okay, move it on there, please, Cormac. In terms of the documentation needed, salary certificate completed by your employer, which will detail the breakdown of the salary. 3 up-to-date consecutive pay slips are needed to confirm the average income. Your employment detail summary, for those of us around a bit longer, that was your P60. So your most recent P60, 6 months bank statements for any current accounts or saving or investments not with AIB, and 6 month statements are required for any borrowings not held with AIB. And guys, that's pretty standard across the board with all providers. So while I'm saying AIB here, my understanding is most of the banks would be identical. The norm would be 6 month statements. You can move it on again, Cormac, thank you. For those on contract employment, increasingly becoming the norm now, we may ask for a CV because just to show us the level of qualifications the individual has, because just remember why we ask is sustainability of income. The bank want to give you the money. That's how they make money. So the bank want to give you the money. They want to give out the loan. But what they want to make sure is that the loan gets paid back. So all they're doing there is seeing what experience you have. So if you did move job or something happened, would you be likely to pick up a job of of a similar standing in terms of income? And that's why we would ask for that. We would also ask for a copy of employment contract, again, just to verify what we're talking about. And invariably with a contract employment, we look for the most recent 3 years P60s. And that's because by the nature of contract employment on a regular basis, the income varies from year to year, and the 3 years gives us an average that we can look at and work on that. Very relevant as well with people who are maybe have a variable element of pay to their income. So they might have a bonus that they get on an annual basis, or there could be shift premium or something like that. So we would ask for those P60s, and that helps there. You can move it on again, Cora, thank you. Sorry, I should have said on the last one, that's fine, no need to go back. Just if you're switching, so we'll talk about that in a second, you would also need to provide your current mortgage statement, obviously. 5 costs associated with getting the mortgage. You've obviously got stamp duty, unfortunately unavoidable, 1% of the purchase price. Legal costs, I'm sure Charlie will touch on in a second, but that's a rough indication, but that's just one part of it. There are other fees that have to be paid. Valuation report will be required. That's €150 in our case, valid for 4 months, and that's by an AIB appointed valuer. Home insurance and life insurance, you have to have them. So any bank will insist that you have home insurance and you have life insurance in relation to the policy, especially when we're talking about someone's principal residence. Okay, Corin. And this is the slide just maybe of interest to people who are moving or maybe who are just tuned in to hear what's happening in the marketplace. And that's, for those of you listening to the radio this morning, there's a big drive around value for money in terms of mortgages, in terms of people shopping around. We shop around for energy now is a pretty standard one. We shop around for our mobile phone providers, our broadband providers, but we're not inclined to shop around on our mortgage, yet the amount of money we pay on a monthly basis is substantial. So I just took the example that we had there of the 300,000 property value with a loan of 270,000. On the left-hand side, you'll see these rates, and the alternative lender is another financial institution. But these are actual rates, and this is a live example. So you will see here that both are providing what we call green rates. There's a lot of a drive at the moment about high energy rating houses, so good energy, A or B energy rated houses. So you can see that the rate is quite good there, 2.25. Go down to the bottom and you'll see the total cost. So over a 35-year period, you'll pay 431,000 back with AIB at the rates that are quoted there. With the alternative lender, which would be a main lender, you'll pay 507,000. Now, guys, that's 76,000 euros over the life of the mortgage, which is a substantial amount of money. I would encourage anyone, and it doesn't matter who they are or what they do or what institution they go to, they should look at this because most institutions will help them with their legal fees or give them a contribution towards it. If you're leaving 76,000 euros behind you, that's a lot of money. So definitely something I would suggest that you look at there. Corey, you move on to the next one, please. Just finally, and I've probably gone way over my time, and Lee and Joanna are going to kill me. But just, why ourselves? From a Cove perspective, it's a Cove and Harbour Chamber. fairly shortly, we'll be the only bank here in town. So I would just encourage anyone to support that. We're around here in Cove since 1830. And hopefully, certainly I don't have any plans to go anywhere. So, you know, like everyone here, we all work as a team. So everyone's on this call. We would liaise on a regular basis, across various different aspects. And I think it's important. We keep on saying to shop local. So I would encourage everyone to support local as well. And finally, there's my contact details. So Lee, I think you might have 1 or 2 questions.
Oh, more than 1 or 2, but we probably only have time for 1 or 2, Colin. Listen, that was great, very interesting. I learned quite a lot from that as well. Interesting how you were saying about, you know, providing us a track record about, you know, paying rent and things like that. You know, you wouldn't think about that, and a lot of people don't know that. So that was a really interesting one. So there was loads of interesting stuff, to be honest with you. But I suppose, you know, at the moment, there could be a lot of people on contract employment, you know, like if you're on a contract or a fixed term contract or whatever, how long would you need to be on a contract now to apply for a mortgage?
I think it depends, right? And this is always what I would say is talk to your particular bank or your provider or your mortgage advisor. Historically, right, in the last, you know, years ago, contract employment was nearly a no-no from a mortgage. And I even had someone into me this week who said, I believe I can't get a mortgage because I have a contract. And that's not the case. They've been on contract, but they've been on continuous contracts, rolling maybe for a period of time. So what I would say is it does depend, but, you know, don't let that block you. Pick up the phone or drop an email. It is becoming the norm now, and more companies are only recruiting people on contract. So absolutely all the financial houses have had to change their policies on that, and we're no different.
So it's always worth picking up the phone anyway, Colin.
Or drop an email, no problem.
Yeah. Super. There's a few more questions after coming in. I might come back around at the end if we've time, but I might just move on if you don't mind for the moment. So move on. So you may have noticed that our president is actually wearing 2 hats this evening. Joanna is the next link in the chain, and of course this is access to the right properties and the experience to help you find the right house in the right location at the right budget. And who better than someone with a wealth of local knowledge, somebody like Joanna Murphy from Joanna Murphy & Sons. She's been in the real estate business for a little over 25 years and has a wealth of knowledge in both the sales and rental market. She first started off with her mother as Victoria Murphy and Daughter Estate, and then progressed to starting her own business in Cove 15 years ago. Recently, Joanna has taken the mantle of her mother business in Kinsale, and her mum is retired, so exciting times ahead for Joanna. You'll find Joanna's for sale boards in all locations: East Cork, West Cork, Kinsale, Cork City, and of course Cove. She's diverse, engaging and knowledgeable, and as she says herself, she loves her job. Her key selling point is engagement with her clients and being on the journey with them to the day they move into their new home or indeed sell their house. Over to you, Joanna. Looking forward to this.
Hi, evening everybody. So yes, as Lee said, buying your home or selling your home, it's a journey, and it really is an emotional journey. And really, the more information you have, the better. So the first slide here goes into buying a house. First thing you need to do is organize your finance, get proof of funding, as Colin said, from the bank. Also, I think it's really important when you're looking to buy a house to have a criteria, have your wish list. Another thing too is you might see a house online. Never judge a book by its cover. Always, you know, if you have kind of an inkling that it might suit, go in and see it. Location is everything. You need, like, it depends on your circumstances. Do you want to be in the country or do you want to be in a city location? Downsizing or upgrading. A lot of people worry about this if they want to change their house. Is it best to sell your house first? Look, of course it is, but it's not essential. The main thing is that you would work with the auctioneer. Always, when you're going to see a property for the first time and you like it, do go back for a second viewing and bring somebody else with you, because a fresh set of eyes is really, really good. And they always say the day you buy a house, the day you sell. That's only true for an investment property. It's not true for your home, because a home it's a mortgage you're going to have for a very long time, and you may not move out of that house for 20 or 30 years. And obviously then you need to organize your survey, which is where Derry will come into during this evening. Can we go on to the next slide, Cormac? So selling your home, first of all, you must pick your estate agent. It's really important that you do get on with your estate agent. You need to find out, number one, what they charge. You have to, also you must agree on a guide price. There's very much of a difference between a guide price and an asking price. I would always tend to pick a guide price because it can go either way. You also need to fill out a letter for engagement whereby that confirms that the estate agent is registered. Presentation, get your house ready. First impressions are lasting impressions. Simple things like putting a flower box outside your house, smell a coffee when I go and do a viewing, have the heating on. There's nothing worse than the wintertime when you go into a house and it's freezing cold, people just want to get out. Or, you know, power wash the outside of your house, give it a fresh lick of paint, it won't cost a whole lot. Change the carpet and the stairs if it needs to. Engage a solicitor. It's really important, again, like when you're engaging your estate agent, you have a good relationship with your solicitor. That solicitor then will request the deeds from the bank, and that can take up to 4 to 6 weeks. So it's really important that you get the ball rolling there. There's a couple of things that you need to get organized when you're selling your house. The NPPR, which is the dreaded national, the non-private principal residence tax. That basically came in 2009 and was there to 2013. So therefore, if you have to prove basically that you did not rent out your house between those years. And the only way that you can prove that is to have 2 utility bills, normally the ESB and the gas or some other utility bill, and fill out an exemption form. If you do not do that, there is a charge of €7,000. Mainly that comes into effect with investment properties because during that time there would have been a €200 fee that you would have had to pay between those years. And some people didn't do that, believe it or not, and then they were stuck with that fee of €7,000, which is a lot of money. The local property tax, which again I'll tap into towards the end of this presentation, that also has to be paid up to date. Management fees, if you're living in an apartment complex, they also have to be paid up to date. Engineer, you need to ensure that if you have any extension on your house, that it either exempt from planning or has a full planning certificate. No matter how many times I say this to people, and there's, oh yeah, it's grand, it's fine, it was, you know, it was under the certain, then it becomes a problem when we get towards the end, and that can delay a sale significantly by 3 to 4 months. Starter planning, so therefore Derry will go through all that towards the end. Also, we need to get an ordnance survey map and an up-to-date one, and again, he can do that. If your boiler needs servicing, simple thing like that, get it done. So that, because it's something that will have to be done. When you engage an auctioneer, remember that they're there for you. And that means it goes from the start of the journey right to the time that you hand those keys over. When a bid comes in, proof of funding is required before a bid can even be made. And if accepted, an engineer must inspect the house. I would always say that within 7 days. You might go to the next slide, Cormac. So how to place an offer. Ring the auctioneer, obviously you're going to view it first, ring the auctioneer and then email in your offer with proof of funding. Remember, your first bid is not your best. And I shouldn't even be saying that, but that is true. If there's a counter bid, then put in another bid. I mean, like at the end of the day, bidding wars are there. If you want that house, go for it, but have a ceiling in your head and just treat it like a business and just be happy with the figure that you put in. If you see a property, oh, you know, I'll put a bid in next week, it's grand. The more that sale drags on, the more people will go and see that house. Have a ceiling what you want to pay for your house, don't get carried away. A mortgage is for life and you are the one that is going to have to pay it back at the end of the day. Once your offer is accepted, you normally have a week, as I mentioned, to get your survey done. You might go to the next slide, Cormac. So the bidding process. The bidding process is daunting and can be very daunting. And people they put it off, they don't want to get hung up on it. But as I said, it's a business and always put yourself in the seller's shoes. If you were selling your house, you'd want the best price as well. The auctioneer doesn't always go for the best price. So if you are in funds and ready to go, that always does work in your favor. But likewise, if you have a house to sell and it is a really easy house to sell, the auctioneer will advise the seller of that and they may wait as they are getting more. So every situation is different. Next slide. So buying a site, buying sites now becoming very popular. So obviously pick your site, find out about the zoning, what type of house would be allowed in that particular area. Is it serviced or is it not? And if it's not serviced, how much is it going to cost? See the exact boundary, engage an engineer and an architect, organize a meeting with the pre-planner to see if you're wasting your time with the house that you're deciding to build there. And once you meet the pre-planner, get an idea of what they would like to be built in that area. And then once that's done, submit your planning. The whole process can take up to 6 months. So normally when you buy a site, it's subject to planning and it would be 6 to 8 months. What else? If you have to sell your house in order to buy the site and build a house, I would suggest that once you get a positive reaction from the planning meeting, I would then put your house up for sale, because even if you got an offer within 2 or 3 weeks, it still does take 3 or 4 months for that sale to close. So you might go on to the next slide, Cormac. So when the property is sale agreed, when is it secure? Booking deposit is a gentleman's agreement. That's the old-fashioned term, if you excuse me saying that. It should be gentle, you know, it should be any person's agreement, but it's known as that. It's not legally binding. Generally, it's 2% of the purchase price, and it's called a booking deposit. When a contract is signed, 10% is paid, and the contract then becomes legally binding. You will only sign that contract once your solicitor is happy that the title deeds are in place and your money, your loan is sanctioned. Gazumping. Unfortunately, gazumping means that when somebody, if you put a deposit down on a house and I get a call from somebody else, or somebody goes knocking on that person's door and offers them more money, unfortunately, there is no law against gazumping in this country, which is an absolute nightmare. It can be very distressing for people. So it's really important to get that sale over the line and be very proactive, and don't hang around. A sale generally takes 8 to 12 weeks, but it can take longer due to title issues, complications, as I mentioned before, planning certificates and finance, or the sale is in a chain. Next slide. So the local property tax, all the rage at the moment. Yes, the situation has changed, but not dramatically. Basically, the local property tax is a self-assessment tax charged in the market of residential properties in the state, and this is paid on an annual basis. So the rates have been cut and the bands have been widened and will include all new properties built since 2013. It has been said that the majority of homeowners are likely to see, you probably will see a decrease as opposed to an increase. All properties from the 1st of November will now have to be valued, and will be valued then every 4 years thereafter. So I think that's all the slides I have. So I suppose if you have any questions, then you can again put them into the chat. So I hope that was a bit comprehensive. Thank you.
Very interesting, Joanna. Oh my God, you flew through it as well.
I'm a fast talker.
You're a really fast talker. I saw the slides and was like, God, you really flew through them. I suppose people are, you know, generally very, you know, see themselves as property hounds, you know what I mean? They're always getting like the property supplement, but I suppose the reality then is very different to looking at the pretty houses and, you know, choosing the one. You have to be a bit more realistic about it. I suppose for you, you've seen it all, Joanna, over the 25 years, as you say. Like, what would you say is the most common reason a house sale would fall through?
Probably the most common reason is that at the moment, planning is a big thing. When people are putting on extensions and they're not getting their cert of compliance or their planning. And what happens then is that when they put the deposit down, that hurdle can be, like, it could be a couple of weeks later, and then people get annoyed, and then they're waiting around, and then something better might turn up, and then they're going to pull out. So yeah, that would be one of the main reasons for me.
Okay. And just a quick one there now. It's just because of, I suppose, the times that we're living in there now at the moment. It's just like, what is the property market like now during this pandemic? I mean, is there a lot of pent up demand?
Well, okay, so the property market is very buoyant at the moment, but it's not buoyant for every type of house. Very buoyant for the first time buyer type of house, or, you know, the 3-bedroom semi, the 2-bedroom townhouse. They're the properties that are going up in value. The detached properties, the period properties, I kind of feel like the 400, the 450 after that, it's not that it's slower, but they're not going up as much. Yeah. Because to get a mortgage for 400 or 500 or 600 is going to be a lot tougher than getting a mortgage for 250,000. So that's where I find, and also in light of the pandemic, I find a lot of people, but you see, it goes swings and roundabouts. A lot of people want to downsize, but then a lot of people want to upsize because now they're working from home and they need more space. And I mean, I suppose Cove is still relatively inexpensive for property. And that's why, and a lot of people are moving to Cove now because the work-life balance is right. So I do envisage it'll go up a small bit for sure.
Yeah, brilliant. I wish we could do more, but we're just going to move on. And thanks a million. Thanks a million for that, Joanna. So now we're going down through the stages, and you've found your dream home and you want to make an offer, or perhaps you already have made an offer. So as a large investment and commitment, it's absolutely vital at this point to get the house checked out by an engineer to check for any issues, particularly large scale issues that will come back to haunt you. So this is really, really important. It's kind of like nearly a given now. So Dermot Alistair is here with us tonight. He has many years' experience as an engineer. I'm very much looking to hear from Dermot, and here's a little bit about him. Dermot is a qualified civil engineer and town planner, and also a chartered building engineer who's worked with Cork County Council for many years in all areas of civil engineering. Dermot has worked in housing with the Architects Department of the Council and as a consulting engineer and town planner in the private sector. Dermot specialises in pre-purchase house surveys, construction supervision, snag lists for new builds, property maps, planning advice, pre-planning meetings, planning appeals and development plan rezoning issues. It's over to you, Derry. Can't wait to hear all about the engineering side of things.
Okay, good evening, everyone. I'm Derry Alistair, Dermot Alistair, actually more commonly known as Derry Alistair. Basically, I want to talk about the engineer and house buying. What an engineer does and why do you need one when you're buying a house. So a pre-purchase house survey would provide peace of mind when you're buying a house. A pre-purchase survey is normally carried out at the sale agreed stage. Buying a house is a massive investment, and you need to be sure that your new home is structurally sound and that you will not have to face serious structural issues in the future. An engineer will inspect and assess the house or building, the type of structure it is and its condition. He will advise you on the type, e.g. timber frame or traditional build, and the quality of the house. He will also assess the BER rating for the house, ranging from G at the lowest level to A at the highest level. Typically houses built around 2000, 2010 came in at around C3 rating. Modern houses today are A3 to A0. So things improved there an awful lot in a short time. He will carry out, he will point out any remedial work or refurbishment that might be required on the house. He will also check compliance with the building regulations that came in 1990 and compliance with the planning permission that was received for the house if it was built after 1964. He will check the property boundaries on the ground and those indicated on the land registry map or the property registration authority map if there is one. An experienced engineer carries out comprehensive, thorough and accurate house surveys. It will provide clients with a written report describing in detail the condition of the property and any recommended repair works. The pre-purchase house survey will consider all aspects of the building integrity and structure, including the exterior structure, interior structure, window and door condition, electrics, plumbing and heating, drainage, water penetration, dampness issues, and condensation, mold, ventilation, pyrite, asbestos, woodworm, all that kind of stuff, and the roof condition. Roof condition is very important, obviously, and any alterations to the roof have a lot of implications for the structure of the house. Attic conversions are they're a very dodgy thing to do, really, because the building regulations, the fire side of it is very onerous. You need fire doors all the way down through the building. You need windows with certain spacings. You need fire escapes, whatever. It's something that shouldn't be done without the advice of an engineer right from the start. A lot of attic conversions have had to be converted back to ordinary attics for storage. He'll also look at the chimneys, any boundary issues, even alterations that require certification, safety issues, and essential maintenance requirements. Remembering that the inspection is limited to a visual assessment only, and if he deems warranted, further investigation may be recommended in the report, such as drain tests, CCTVs, drain surveys, and testing of heating systems, etc., etc. Now, buying new or old is another question I'm often asked. Older houses obviously can be cheaper than new houses, but there can be considerable costs and time involved in refurbishment work to improve its condition. Improving the BER, the building energy rating, possibly extending and improving the house specification. At the present time, the cost of building work, extensions and refurbishment is very, very high. Actual building costs are going through the roof at the moment. Cement, timber have all gone up massively in the last while. And a lot of small builders are charging considerably more than they were charging 3 or 4 years ago. And also many trades and builders have a minimum waiting list of 6 months. New houses, on the other hand, are modern designed, normally built to a good standard specification, and they have a far better BER rating. They're all A0 to A1. So they comply with current building regulations. So if you can afford it, probably a good way to go is buy a new house, as there are no further or hidden costs in it. Now, if you buy an old house, building an extension might be necessary to increase the size of it, or just increase the comfort of it, or whatever. You can build, planning wise, you can build up to 40 square meters without planning. Now that 40 square meters includes every bit of an extension, including a front porch up to 2 meters. All those extensions are taken into account in the 40 square meters. And if you're building a 2-story extension, say in a terrace house or anything like that, you normally have to apply for planning permission, because the requirement is that any wall on the first floor should be at least 3 meters away from any boundary. So that really means that 2-story extensions to terrace houses would normally require planning. Okay, a simple extension application then could cost you 3,000 euros to actually just get the planning, plus possibly up to 4 or 5 months waiting time to actually get the planning through. So if you are thinking of extending, look at the other houses around you and see what they've got permission for and what they've done, particularly in semi-Ds or terrace houses. That's, you're probably going to get permission for what other people have done around you anyway. Decide what you want to build. And the next step would be to email or meet the area planner for the area with your proposal. Engage an architect or an engineer to draw up detailed plans and submit your application, having got agreement with the area planner on the style and type of build you propose. The next step then, while the planning is going through, you can get prices from a builder while the application is being processed. When planning comes through, engage an engineer to oversee the project and certify payments for the bank to the builder, if they're required. One thing important here is there's building control now. BCMS is a big factor here. The building, whatever extension you do, has to be certified as compliant with current building regulations and with the planning permission that was received for it. And without that planning permission, Joanna spoke about it earlier, without that letter of compliance or certification of compliance, it's very difficult to sell a house. Now, buying a site to build a one-off house, this process can at least take 4 months. Sometimes people are held up for a year or more, planning being the hardest part of it. If you're thinking of buying a site, I suppose the first thing to do is select a site and then check the development plan zoning for the area. The development plan is the basis of planning control. It's the written document that the council bring out every 6 years, and it states their policy towards development in the area for the next 6 years. So they actually zone areas, and they zone some residential, some are green belt, and it's very difficult to get planning in a green belt area. You have to live in the area for 7 years, work in the area, be from the area or whatever. So it is very difficult. They're trying to cut down green belt developments, one-off developments, because it creates big problems with ribbon development and whatever. So email or phone the area planner and see what they think of your proposal. The planner will discuss what type of development, if indeed any, will be permitted, and check. Oh yeah, and check in the area. He'll tell you exactly what you can build, what you can't. There is a book of rural house guidelines brought out by Cork County Council. If the planner is in favour of letting you build a house in the area, check that and get an architect or an engineer then to do a sketch proposal, a layout map first of all, and a house sketch before you do detailed drawings. Go back to have a pre-planning meeting with the area planner and discuss the pros and cons of the development and get agreement on the form of the permitted development, exactly what he or she will allow you to build there. Meet the area engineer also and get agreement on services like septic tank, biocycle, single dwelling wastewater treatment plants have to be EPA certified. Water supply, road site distance is another requirement. On an ordinary 40 kilometer road, you need up to 70 meters site distance each way from a proposed new entrance. So when you've got agreement from the area planner and the area engineer, then get the architect to drop the final full set of plans and details. This could involve the architect, obviously. You'll need a BER guy to advise you on the BER for the house. There's a predicted BER, building energy rating, that you go for, and that has to be certified in the end. You might need structural advice from an engineer at this stage for beams, and if a one-off house might need certain things certified and whatever. You submit the application. There could be referrals for further information by the planning department. There could be objections. You may be granted permission with conditions or refusal with reasons. Then you can either appeal to Bord Pleanála or forget the whole project and start again, buy a new house somewhere. When planning comes through, you need to engage an engineer to certify the project and certify payments to the bank. He also has to engage with building control, and you either have an opt-out here. You've not, for a one-off house, you can opt out of building control, but it still means you have to send in and submit all your construction details for floors, walls, foundations, floors, walls, roof, and whatever. And if you opt out, you will have to have an engineer to certify the building as compliant with planning and the building regulations. The next thing an engineer can do for you, stroke planner, I suppose, is he can advise you and consult with the planning department for you. An engineer will advise you on pre-planning. He will prepare for a pre-planning meeting for you and attend it with you on your behalf. You can also use an engineer, town planner, to submit zoning proposals for the next development plan if you want to get some land that you're interested in zone for housing or whatever. He will also prepare any development, any house you're trying to build. He'll prepare all the detailed drawings that are needed for building control. They all have to be submitted before you get a commencement notice from Cork County Council to start the work. The local authority give a commencement notice. Without that commencement notice and going through the building control system, you will never sell the house afterwards, because no one can do a certificate of compliance with planning and building regulations. So it basically means your house is unsaleable if you don't go through this process at this stage. An engineer then will also certify payments to the builder from the bank, etc. And basically the most important thing of the whole lot is he will certify compliance. I hope that goes some way towards explaining what an engineer can do for you in acquiring a house. So that's basically an outline of it. And if you have any questions, fire away.
Thanks, Jerry. Geez, my God, you sound like a very busy man.
Yeah.
It's a bit like the NCT thing, is it, Jerry? Some of it is advisory and then some of it is a fail, is it?
Well, I mean, you go look at a house with a guy and he might have no experience of it at all. It might be a house that needs a whole lot of work. He doesn't realize it. He's just looked at it, maybe, particularly with COVID, people haven't been able to get in to see the house they're buying and really look at them. And I suppose, when you're at it 40 odd years or whatever, you do get a feel when you walk into a house nearly straight away, whether it's a good house or not, or whether it's suitable for that person. Like if you've got a part-time builder who's looking for a house, he's looking for a different thing than a guy who's lecturing in UCC and
doesn't want the hassle.
Or a hammer from a nail, I mean,
yeah, this is true.
So you kind of assess the person who's buying it and what he's buying a small bit as well,
Yeah, super. It's very interesting, that whole world, Jerry, and thanks a million for your contribution there. Learned an awful lot. And thanks a million. So we're going to move on to the final piece of the puzzle. Okay, so again, with an investment of this scale, having the right legal advice is important, so that you have someone to cast an expert eye over the contracts and legal documents to ensure that no I is left undotted or no T is left uncrossed. So we're going to hand over to Charlie Daly. I'm going to tell you a little bit about him first, though, from Charles C. Daly and Company. So Charlie has been practicing as a solicitor and co for many years, being the first student to qualify as a solicitor, having attended the inaugural 9th degree course at UCC. Previously, Charlie worked as a legal assistant with Cork County Council. He's lived and worked in Cove for over 30 years now and has been and continues to be involved in many voluntary organisations, having once been the chairman of the Irish Guide Dogs for the Blind and was instrumental in bringing into Ireland the whole concept of assistance dogs for children with autism, for which he is very proud of being that trailblazer. Well done, Charlie. He has sat on the board of Brighter Communities Worldwide 6 years and has given many, many years to Cove Youth Services, and to date continues to be involved. An organisation which has grown from absolutely nothing to providing vital facilities, amenities and support to the youth of the Great Island. For the moment and for tonight, Charlie is going to talk to us about the legal ramifications of buying and selling property. Over to you, Charlie.
Good evening all. I'm conscious of time, and I think I'll just focus on the purchasing aspect, and more particular because the very, very able speakers before me have dealt and have impinged upon my territory, so to speak, because they've so capably made their presentation. But first of all, I really don't think you should leave finding your solicitor until the last moment. You know, find somebody that you can trust and that you can work with. Terribly important. And why? Because there is a thing called AML now, money laundering, and when you go to the bank, you have to give your bank statement, a copy of your passport and all this. And believe it or not, we have to go and do that as well. Nightmare stuff. And you can't just rock into your solicitor with 50 grand and say, here, bring it over to the bank, because I won't do it. I don't think any other solicitor will do it either. Had enough getting 5,000, and you have to get bank statements to prove where this cash came from and the source of this money. So gone on with the days you could try that one. Then a solicitor also has to give you what is termed a Section 150 letter. Now, what is a Section 150 letter? And this is equal whether you're buying a house or selling the property. It sets out the contractual relationship, i.e. the agreement with the solicitor and the client. The last thing you want is a misunderstanding. It's stressful enough buying a house without saying, oh, you told me the stamp duty was 0.5%. No, the stamp duty is 1%. You have additional fees as well. They should be set out as clearly as possible in that what's called Section 150 letter. No disputes, no misunderstandings. Then, provided you found your ideal house, great, you get your engineer out to have a look at the house, and simultaneously, or running in parallel, you have the vendors who prepare the contracts, because they have the title, and the person who owns it gives him or her, more particular, all the necessary information to enable them to prepare the contract. And then this is where it kicks in at this stage. For those of you who did Latin, a distant memory for most, I'm sure, at this stage, with caveat emptor, the buyer beware. And then you and your team, your engineer and everybody have one chance to go in, check the title, check the house. And if you miss something, tough. Because after the event, no point in raising the flag. You've had the opportunity up into the process, and that is the time to make your inquiries. Then, you know, you've got to work as a team. You've got to work with the bank. You've got to work with your engineer, because if somebody puts their finger into the wheel simply won't move. But if everybody talks to each other, and if you have a vendor solicitor doing their job, a purchaser solicitor doing their job, the engineer doing his job, the bank doing their job, and you in turn then complying with the bank's special conditions, whether it be have your loan approval in place, house insurance in place, you must furnish them with pay slips. And somebody is aghast when they realize the week before the sale is closing, the bank saying, no, we can't give you the money because X, Y, and Z is outstanding. If we work together, work as a team, this is all so achievable. Not half the stress that you would believe that's there if we work as a team. And if we run on, usually, yes, Joanne said it can take 8 to 10 weeks to 12 weeks. Now, this is a very idealized little chat we are having now, because if they go wrong, good God, they go wrong sometimes. And then the proverbial hits the fan. So we live in happy time for the moment and think this is a very idealized and nothing goes wrong, which, by the way, it only happens about 5% of the time, just to give some reassurance to people who are starting off in this process. And then the contracts are signed, they're returned to the vendors. The vendor signs the contracts on the payment of a 10% deposit. But so there is no doubt in any purchaser's mind, under the COVID and the Law Society regulations now, the contract doesn't become absolutely binding on the purchaser if, in fact, the bank pulled the money at the last moment. The contract dies. I've only seen it happen once thus far. It's a horrible feeling for everybody, but it can happen. So if people lose their jobs, there are many other reasons why the bank may have to pull finance. It's unfortunate for everybody, but unfortunately it does happen. So we'll work on the assumption. Oh yes, sorry. One further thing then, when you're going to look at their house and you're talking to your competent auctioneer, find out what is included in the purchase price. Whether it's carpets, curtains, light fittings. The last thing we want to do, the exciting day you get your key, you move into the house, and dear God, the sofa that you thought was included, the pair of curtains in the living room that you thought was included have disappeared. No, get that ironed out at the very beginning, saves an awful lot of heartache. Then, all things going well, you get your keys, provided everybody has worked as a team within the time frame that I spoke about, and you are very happy out, and you get onto the ESB, you change the utilities into your own name, which is very important, because if you don't, you run the risk that the utilities will be cut off. And then that's really where a lot of these solicitors' work commences at that stage, because the deed has to be stamped and the stamp duty paid to the revenue commissioners. Then the deeds have to be sent to Waterford or Dublin to be registered. It can take anything up to 6 months to a year. And then when that very process is finished, the solicitor has given an undertaking, i.e. a promise to the bank, that the title deeds will be sent to the bank. And the bank then will retain those title deeds as security for the loan. Sometimes people are coming in, selling a property and say, where are the title deeds? And they say, well, you have them. And I say, no, they said you bought the house. And then you have to explain that the bank retained those as security for the loan. And I just briefly now, I'm very conscious of time impinging upon us, and selling property, look, engage with your solicitor as fast as you can. Get your paperwork in order, be it LPT, pay your LPT, NPPR, non-principal private residence charge. If you were to pay it, produce a receipt. If you're exempt, you have to apply to the local authority to get an exemption. Obviously, if you're selling, you have no stamp duty, you have no registration fees, you have, other than maybe paying a few €100 to get various letters that the roads and services are in charge of local authority, etc. But other than that, the only expense you have is the solicitor and the auctioneer. And of course, your loan has to be paid off by your solicitor, because the bank has given a promise to the bank when they get out the title deeds to enable them to sell the house, that the bank's security will be cleared. And also, you've heard Derry saying it, in fact, Joanne saying it, if you're selling a property, for God's sake, try and make sure that your paperwork is in order, such as planning and that, so it doesn't hold up the whole process. Now, that's a quick run through, and that's it.
Wow, that was even faster than Joanna's.
There you are.
If there was a race, there was a race. I don't know who would have won there. You and now we were neck and neck, Toby. But listen, it was actually super, and I feel quite, conscious that you didn't get a chance to properly go through your slides. So just for anybody here this evening, we might just consult with the speakers, and if it's okay, we may send on some of the presentations, because I think there was some good content in there. But I'm just gonna check first before I speak out of turn. Like Charlie, I had a few questions, but I suppose you've answered most of them during the course of it, really. But it's funny how you talked about working as a team. Because it is a bit of a team event. It's a bit of a relay race, isn't it? Like when we started, you know what I mean? It's like going to get the loan, going to get the financing, then talking, finding the right place, then talking to Jerry, or getting some advice from an engineer, and then yourself. But actually, would make more sense maybe to have little teams, would it? Or is that like a ridiculous thing where people kind of work closely together quite a lot, so that it kind of the process is eased then for the buyer or seller?
Well, it probably does work that way, because if you have an engineer you can trust, then the engineer is going to go out in time and do a competent job, and he won't hold any favours for anybody. And indeed, I've dealt with Derry on many occasions, and indeed that is the very thing he won't do. If he goes out and does something wrong, he will make it quite clear to everybody concerned that there lies a problem. And many times he's put people off purchasing for different reasons. So yeah. He's a consummate professional in that respect.
Oh, everybody here is, there's no doubt about that. I know I can feel the professionalism coming through the airwaves. But listen, thanks a million for that, Charlie. And that's the last speaker. And we've actually come pretty much on the dot to 8 o'clock. So we've come to the end of our Keys to the Future event. Again, we'll be following up if you want any information about the LPT bans or anything that's come out of tonight, just get in touch with us in the Cove Chamber and we'll try to get you as much information as we can about the subject from the speakers here tonight. So just want to thank everybody for the contribution, the speakers, for his help on the technology. So we'll be running more workshops on various issues, including excursions and energy. So keep an eye on our website for more details. So I'm going to hand it back over to Joanna, and thanks to everybody for coming tonight.
So I'm off mute, yeah. So I hope you all found that informative. As Charlie said, Colin and Derry, it is teamwork. And I do feel it's a journey, and it's a journey from start to finish. And if everything is, if you have all your paperwork right and you have the right team around you and everyone's working together, it doesn't have to be daunting. So that's, I suppose the main thing I want to say. And, don't be afraid to ask questions. That's what everyone, like, we're dealing with it every day of the week. But selling a house for you is such a big decision and such a big deal in your life. So, and I do feel when I meet people seeing houses, oh my God, like, what do we do? What do we do? How do we go into a solicitor? How do we approach them? What do we say? And just ask the questions. Everyone's there to help, no matter who they are in that profession. So I really hope you found it informative. And again, as Lee said, we can send on the slides. And if you have any questions, please let us know. So thank you.
Thank you,
Good night.
everybody.
Good night. Thanks.
Good night.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. See you.